Two, one. Ladies and gentlemen, Hazel Savage, founder of Muzio, is on the program. How are you, Hazel?
I am very well, thank you, Wayne, on this lovely Friday. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I've been streaming since 6 a.m. yesterday, but of course I had naps in between, taking a break here and there.
Yeah, but you're the most high energy person that I know, so I don't worry about you. I reckon you could do another 48 hours if you needed to.
True, yes. Because the guests are giving me the energy. I could feel the energy back from them when I talk to them. Like, it's always a joy to talk to you. I remember talking to you on the CMO Asia podcast as far back as, I think, June or July. It was a great conversation. So you definitely have to come back.
I'm back. Happy to be back.
Are you in Telok Ayer office and near those fantastic food around Chinatown?
I'm in Chinatown. I'm in my own house in Chinatown, and even better, I've got all the music equipment, I've got all the amps, the electronic drum kit, we've got all that kind of stuff, and still around all the good food in Chinatown. So I'm right in the middle of things.
You pick the best locations. Office is like in the heart of CBD, and you're living, around, surrounded by all the great food, right? I remember clay pot chicken rice at Chinatown Hawker Center on the second floor. Is like the bomb, the go-to place for great food. I always go there. How about you? Where do you normally get your fix?
My number one favorite within walking distance from here is probably Maxwells. I really like Maxwells Food Center. There's these 3 stalls in particular. You got to know the ones, right? There's a really good dumpling stall. There's a really good prata stall. And then there's a really good char kway teow stall. So you got to go to the specific ones. And then this is a kind of a new thing. There's also a bar that sells beers called Third Culture Brewing. And I think it's co-owned by a Singaporean Australian. And so you can get really good quality craft beer as well. So they got it all going on right in Maxwell's. So there's a little plug for Maxwell's Food Center.
I think they should contact you for some sponsorship because you really know them so well. It makes me hungry all over again. I want to go back to Maxwell.
Yeah, I'm unaffiliated. They did not pay me for this particular promotion. This is just my genuine opinion. But maybe I'll go and hit them up. I'll send them a copy of this video.
Yes, and you deserve all this. Maybe a sponsorship, maybe for 2 years of a free chicken rice or something. To be involved in, right? And
exactly.
Of course, I'll be talking about food all day long. We're gonna talk about music, which is very close to your heart and my heart. And of course, it's surrounded by all those electronic drum kit, and my fingers are itchy. I feel like coming over, one of these days to jam with you and play those Weezer songs that we grew up listening to.
Yeah, well, we're gonna start a band, aren't we, Wayne? That's the plan.
What's the name of the band gonna be called?
I'm open to ideas. I'm happy to workshop it. I'm not I feel like it should almost be a bit like, when you have a covers band, like that the all-female Iron Maiden covers band is called like Iron Maidens. I feel like it should be something like a little play on words, but I haven't really got any ideas. So I need to start thinking about it.
How about this one? Tweezers.
Tweezers. And can we play with like really big eyebrows, fake eyebrows that we've stuck on, just to kind of give it a little extra? Okay, maybe not. I'll have a think about it, but I like tweezers as a name. Just
having a laugh, right? And I think that's a great idea. I think you're a really creative person, and what we love about you, especially our Podfest Asia community, right? You're one of our favorite co-founders in the entire world, and you're especially handpicked by our community because we know that you are music tech lifer. That's what you also wrote on your LinkedIn profile, which I absolutely agree. And of course, you're currently based in Singapore and often found at startups using your 14 years experience in key roles in HMV, Shazam, Pandora, Universal Music Group, BandLab, and now at Muzio. It's a great growth for the music industry in Asia and globally. I'm actually reading off a script, by the way. This is my introduction. Maybe you can do your own introduction next and give us a 1-minute elevator pitch about Muzio.
Yeah, well, I think you nailed it there in terms of my biography, and I think I call myself a music tech lifer because I've never done anything else, and so I'm not sure anyone else would have me now. I'm too qualified in music, but when it comes to Muzio, we are an artificial intelligence company for the music industry, and what that means is when I was working at HMV back in 15 years ago when I was putting the new CDs on the shelf ready for sale on a Monday morning. That was new music. And on a really busy week, there'd maybe be 5 CDs. And now you have streaming services like Spotify say, we get 40,000 new audio tracks a day uploaded to our platform. So what used to come out in a year now comes out every single day. And that's fantastic. It's great for artists. It's great for the creative community. But it's a challenge for how do we deal with that volume of music? How do we know what we have? How do we know what's good? How do we know what we promote to people and put in front of people? And so the Muzio technology can do that for many companies. We help record labels, publishers, and streaming services. So yeah, that's Muzio in a nutshell.
And I think this week has been pretty interesting because Spotify dropped their Wrapped annual year-end report thingy, right? And it's basically everybody's posting their Spotify top 5 lists, of the music or artists that they listen to. So what's in your top 5? I'm very curious.
Well, great question. And obviously I've been seeing all the Spotify list dropping as well. And I feel like, I don't know if you've seen, there's been a little bit of backlash this year as well. Some people sort of joking that it's become so predictable now and that it's become a little bit of it's become a little bit repetitive. So, I mean, to be honest, so that's my first thought is like, are we seeing a little bit of backlash for the first time on people sharing personalized data because it's a little bit me. And but I think still lots of people will share it, and I still find them fun to look at. And then the second part of it is guilty confession. I'm not a Spotify user. So my platform of choice for listening to music, I actually predominantly either just listen to the music that I already have, which quite often is CDs and vinyl that are not available on streaming services, or on YouTube. I like to kind of build my own playlists on YouTube. And I think because I work in the music industry, I'm maybe what the industry would call a super user. I know exactly what I want to listen to, when I want to listen to it. And so I don't really use the sort of the great features that these companies provide. But I think that makes me, I think I'm the exception. I'm not the majority of people. But I could always list top 5 bands. But what about you, Wayne? What's your top 5?
I haven't really checked my rap list yet. To be really honest, I think number 1 should be either 9 Inch Nails or Tool. Yeah, one of these bands. So, but I find myself, living in Spotify a bit more these days because of the podcast. And I think the reason is also because of the smart speaker that I recently bought. I'm talking to my smart speaker more and more. And it's like, it's Google service, right? So it's basically linked to my Spotify account. So it's basically, whatever podcast that I request or over my smart speaker, basically, they pull the source or the podcast, they stream it from Spotify. So I think it'll be interesting to find out what kind of podcast actually I spend or I lived in, during the pandemic, especially where I think my consumption of music and podcasts basically grew or overshot by 1,000% during this time. Also partially because of all these algorithms and the smart speaker that is invading my home, during the pandemic. I talk to my smart speaker more than my children. So, this is the kind of thing that is what technology does to us, right? It changes our consumption patterns and behaviors. And I think that what you mentioned is really interesting because you build tools, that enabled all this music discovery, that enabled tagging, enabled, specific music to be easily discovered and found. So, but you don't actually use Spotify that much. So I'm very curious in terms of like how podcast industry, right? Like this is a festival for Podfest Asia community. Many podcasters are listening and tuning in. They're very interested in how tagging technology using AI, for example, can actually help their podcast grow and be discovered.
I think what's really interesting, especially about podcasts, is I feel like podcast is still kind of an emerging category. I know that might sound silly for people that have been doing it maybe as long as yourself, Wayne, but it's still a little bit further behind in terms of the technological advancements compared to, say, music. And so whereas music is very sort of deeply embedded, people are, in some cases, just starting to think about, well, how could podcasts be better discovered? And how can we provide them to the user better, and how can we have them in a better area? So it's a really interesting space. And I think, one of the things that we do as a company is we can tell straight away when we analyze an audio file, whether it is music or whether it is spoken word. And, there are different royalty rates for podcasts compared to music. So if platforms want to work with us to decide whether this is music or whether this is podcast, and at least then they're not creating playlists that are like 3 songs a podcast, 3 songs 2 podcasts, which doesn't really make any sense. So we can help people sort their data, and hopefully that's better for the end user. But just coming back round to the bigger picture as well, we have demos on our website, where people can try our tagging and they can try our search. It is predominantly on music files. But my goal as well when I started a company was that I like to create tools that are B2B, that we can work directly with the platforms. And the reason being, I played in an all-girl punk band in London myself, and I still play guitar. And so many new businesses come out, and their business model is to charge the artist, to charge the end user. And there's a couple of reasons why I don't like that. Firstly, artists are not the people that have a lot of spare money to spend. And then also, I don't think that the responsibility of all this data and all this discoverability lies entirely with the artist. The platform, which is the one that then promotes everything, they get all the upside of the engagement. And so really selling the product to them means that the artists get the benefit without them having to pay additionally another fee. So that's a little bit of my goal, but really, the ability to pass through data and sort it out so that it is more discoverable. And also, like you say, with your new smart speaker, voice activation. So the ability to have, with music, moods attached. So, hey Spotify, hey Alexa, hey Amazon, play me something happy. How do we get happy things if we've only got a list of artists and titles? And I do believe that podcasting will go the same way. We'll be able to know geographies, we'll be able to know language, we'll be able to know even possibly context, and that's really exciting.
I think you mentioned a very important keyword there, which is context and the transcriptive nature of content, right? So it's like podcasting is facing a lot of challenges in terms of how to be more contextual, more transcriptive, so that whatever that was discussed, like a topic during a conversation, can be picked up by algorithm and being discovered or being pushed or being searchable, and make it so easy for even putting like a playlist of music with segments or snippets from podcasts. I think that's something that is really an exciting development. And again, I have to name drop. I think Spotify, they announced something of that sort during this Wrapped event where everyone's getting their year-end list, right? I think one of the things that they send out to podcasters is that they're coming up with innovations whereby any podcaster can do a microcast, which is a podcast less than 10 minutes. And then they can embed any music that they love to actually fill in the conversation. Like, the kind of podcasters or broadcasters that I grew up listening to, like John Peel, yeah? He likes to talk a little bit, and then he will, after 10 minutes, he will actually play music. And after playing some music, he'll go back to talking again. So that's kind of a format that the podcasters like to adopt. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be just a 30-minute Q&A all the time. You can intersperse with the right kind of music. And that's where your technology and your capabilities from Muzio can come in, right? You tag the right music to make it searchable for anyone who's going to have that kind of music into their program. Basically, what these capabilities is to tag, to make it searchable, and to put it in very layman terms, for podcasters who are listening in, this kind of technology is here and it's going to evolve and even become a bigger part of maybe content creation in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's really exciting. And as you say, I love the sound of this idea of microcasts with music blended in. I think, when we think about the future of podcasting and we think about the future of music, these innovations are what I hope will drive things forward. And I think that surely has to be a very exciting announcement for your community, for sure.
Yeah, and like what you mentioned about the responsibility of the platforms to actually adopt this technology, and then actually not laying down the charges or the expenses or the cost onto the content creator itself is a great move in terms of helping, to make the content creators be more focused on the art craft, the expression. And of course, I'm not worried about, should I actually invest in technology to make my podcast, more searchable or more discoverable, for example? This should be the responsibility of the big firms, like you said.
I think so, yeah. And as I say, it's not to say, I do understand the complexity of the business models of the big firms, when they're trying to figure out how to be profitable and trying, I do believe, to be fair to artists and podcasters. But as I say, I feel like it's my responsibility as a smaller company not to put additional burden onto the artists and the creators. Because those you guys have an important job to do in the content creation. So I like you to get on with that and not try and come after you for any additional money. But yeah, I think it's a really exciting time for podcasts and for podcast growth. I'm sure when the statistics are announced about year-on-year growth for how many people are consuming podcasts, how many more podcasts are available online, I think the numbers are going to be absolutely phenomenal. So it's and as I say, I feel like the technology is always maybe just sometimes a little bit playing catch up. So we'll also be able to see some really exciting stuff coming out in 2021. So I think it's going to be a good year for podcasting for sure.
I think you nailed it in the head. Yeah, when I got my report for my CMO Asia podcast, right? There's basically 4 digits growth in every category. And I'm very surprised that my biggest growth is actually in the UK, where I'm getting more listeners than ever. I think partly because of the hardware innovations, right? You see the likes of Amazon having their Echo, Alexa, of course, Google having their Nest audio, I think Apple with their HomePods. These kind of hardware is basically going to places where audiences consume their content, and they're invading our homes now. I think the same way where everyone was wearing white earphones when iPods was really popular, right?
Yeah.
It really drove this innovation and also the adoption of digital music. And then it becomes mobile phones where we are streaming music on our mobile phones. And now with all these smart speakers in our home, because we're just able to talk to it, like the OK Google, play me Nirvana, for example, and I don't even have to lift a finger and the music fills the spaces in my apartment. It's going to change behaviors. It's going to change content consumption, maybe a frequency as well. That's why we are excited in our community, because that means more chances of our progress being heard. And I found that I've been consuming music by 1,000% during the pandemic. And the consumption of podcasts have grown by 1,000% as well. So I'm like, hearing more stuff, and maybe for someone who is not an introvert and not very good at expressing myself, I'm becoming more knowledgeable and articulative because as a result of hearing more and I learn more. So I think it's one way to actually raise the tide and lift all boats. I think everyone wins. This is a situation where everyone wins: the music industry people and the podcasting people as well.
And actually, I have a slightly funny story on that as well. I take it, with your home devices, you must have hidden them far away for this conversation. Because I was on a video call once with a client, and I don't know which one you have, but I basically was using an example of how you can use voice devices to call playlists. And OK Google, play me something. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but his Google device actually switched on and said, looking, and I was like, oh, I've activated the Google device via Singapore across the web. So you have to be careful as well when you're on a video call with someone. If you say those words, you can trigger somebody's device in their home, which and then your call is derailed for a few minutes while they go and shut it off and turn it down and turn the music off from playing. But yeah, that's happened to me. So that's a funny story, which I don't think pre-COVID had ever happened. So that's another fun one for 2020.
That's super risky, right? What if you just activate some secrets from a smart speaker? Only a smart speaker knows you more than anybody else is collecting all the data, like where you go and who you meet. Like I'm using a lot to set appointments. I used to have the time. This I just tell OK Google insert.
But you know what, Wayne? I think we're being very smart. We both have headphones on, so I don't think, no matter how loud I shouted, it's only going straight into your ears, right? So maybe this is the latest in security devices.
Deterrent, yeah. This is a very good deterrent. So let's use that more often.
Okay, I'm on board.
Talking about all these, tech companies and of course the hardware manufacturers, they go where the audience go. Content creators do the same. And of course, your music has always been in your blood, from your career as well. I could see that music is a common thread throughout. It inspired you to build this company. So how has it been like, for you to start a business in Singapore? And are you getting a lot of support? And also, do you feel the love and the camaraderie and the belonging, the tribe from this community, the tech community specifically in Singapore?
Yeah. Actually, it's really interesting. So I've lived in Singapore for 5 years, and I started Muzio about 2.5 years ago. And when we raised our first round of seed funding for Muzio, we were the first ever VC-funded deep tech music company. Like, if you go to London or if you go to LA, there are like whole incubators, like Abbey Road Red or Textiles Music. There are lots of companies in a similar space, not doing the same thing, but doing something within music and technology. And here we were kind of like the only fish in the pond. But that said, there's nothing wrong with being the first, and there's nothing wrong with creating a new space where you see opportunity. But luckily, so that was kind of an interesting perspective, and I've definitely seen more people be interested in the audio space and more people be interested in music technology since the 2.5 years ago that we started. But then also on the, obviously music tech is very specific, but when it comes to the sort of founders and the entrepreneurs, there's already an absolutely fantastic community here. I mean, Singapore is known for its, fintech, deep tech, hardware, IoT, because of our proximity to sort of manufacturing and trading in Asia as a whole, and also due to Singapore being an incredibly business-friendly place to start a company. So I have friends in supercomputing. I have friends who are founders in other AI companies. I have friends who are founders in quantum mechanics. Like, it's an absolutely fantastic ecosystem for being a founder. And I have to say, if you read a lot of books about being a founder, they often say it's a very lonely journey. And I think that's the one thing I've never found, because the community here of founders is so phenomenal. And even if they're not music tech specific, that's okay. I got the music covered. But the actual community of founders is absolutely fantastic in Singapore.
That's amazing to hear, because it's a slightly contrast to what we're experiencing with the podcasting industry, because it's so new. Maybe in terms of like lagging behind countries like US or even China and Philippines, right? Podcasting industry still very much at its baby steps phase in Singapore. We don't actually meet one another until we have this Podfest Asia community that I've set up, right? And I've been meeting podcasters every day ever since this idea to bring them together, to bring people together, and also to put a spotlight on all these people who are working in the podcasting industry. And of course, it's not just people who are creating content as in a podcast. There are also people who are like content creators who stream online on YouTube, on the socials, and of course people who are in the audio industry as well, and in audio deep tech related fields like yours. I think you are creating your own category.
Yeah,
other people who are doing what you're doing, and that makes it so special. Yeah.
Also, Wayne, I think you're doing the same, as you say. Just because the US and China and Philippines have more developed podcast communities doesn't mean it's not worth doing in Singapore, right? It's like you can be the one that starts it off, and I think sure, it is a harder thing to do, but why not? Someone's got to be the first, right?
And talk about founders, right? One of the founders that maybe we should mention and pay tribute to is Tony Hsieh, founder of Zappos. So he recently passed away, right? I remember that one of the things that inspired me to also like build a community for podcasters in Asia is the very fact that he wrote on a book that he gave me when I visited his HQ in Las Vegas. In the book, he wrote, whatever you're thinking, think bigger. So the news when he came out on socials that he passed away as a result of injuries sustained in a fire, right, was totally shocking to me, because he was only 46 years old, and he touched many people's lives and probably inspired a lot of people to start either a movement or just an idea that they can execute, and making them think bigger. So what's your take about Tony Hsieh? Is he someone that you also look up to in terms of when you started your company? Who are some of your sources of inspiration?
Yeah, I have to say, I actually hadn't heard the news about Tony Hsieh, but I do know that Zappos is an absolutely legendary story, especially for anyone looking into e-commerce or anybody looking into customer service. They literally created the gold standard. And when you read about their process and their innovation in that space, it's unparalleled. And you know, there are lots of companies that do one thing and become known for it very well. And I think, you know, that company will always be remembered for their innovations in the CS space. When it comes to me and who do I look up to and who do I envisage, it's really challenging. Because I work in an industry or two industries, both music and technology, where there are not a heck of a lot of women in the space, in either of the spaces. And then when you combine them, there's even less still. So I tend to not necessarily look for, you know, inspiration necessarily within my own vertical. But there's definitely a bunch of other female founders, which I tend to, you know, those are the ones that I'm interested. So I actually started my company at Entrepreneur First, which is a talent investor, and they're from the UK, but they have offices in Singapore, and they have a female co-founder, Alice, and she started a coding school for girls, as well as being the co-founder for Entrepreneur First, and she's starting a family this year as well. And I'm always very impressed by her, and I think she's an incredibly inspirational individual. And then also I probably look to the kind of the peer network that I also get from Entrepreneur First. There's a lot of other fantastic female founders doing a lot of interesting deep tech things that started via Entrepreneur First. So that's kind of really where I look to for inspiration and look to for stories. You know, I tend to look a little bit outside my own music tech space, which obviously has its own legends that I'm sure everybody knows about. You know, like everyone knows Steve Jobs, I would hope.
Yeah, definitely. So it's like for your space, right? Or even for anyone who is going to aspire to be a founder of your own tech company and be able to actually, compete shoulder to shoulder with, of course, the dominant players are always the men, right? And they're always like probably in very maybe high positions, or they are controlling like even funding and things like that. But to have your own community where, you know, it's basically you are not limited in terms of what you can achieve because you get a support from your group, from your community. And what I'm hearing is that there are a lot of female founders in your community who are helping one another, taking care of each other, and making sure that everyone, you know, has as good, if not better, chance of succeeding in this male dominant tech industry.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. And, you know, I think the stat just came out recently that of all of the funding in the world, only 3% of it goes to a company with at least one female founder. And that's a very low amount. But I have to say, I'm incredibly proud of my own investor, my lead investor here in Singapore, Wavemaker Partners, where without trying, 25% of their portfolio has a female founder that they've invested in. And again, I think they you know, aren't deliberately investing significantly above the industry rates, but they invest in the people that they like and the people that they believe in. And obviously not using any unconscious bias to invest against women. So, you know, I'm really, really lucky to have such a fantastic lead investor here as well. And I try to do what I can where I can to help promote, female entrepreneurs globally, because I think if I can do it, I want everyone else to give it a shot as well.
I think Podfest Asia community, we fully support this egalitarian, you know, approach whereby everyone is equal and it's fair for everyone, so that everyone has a chance to succeed, right? And it's all about, you know, taking care of each other and raising the tide and lift all boats. So that's what our community is all about. So we are fully behind you, you know, in terms of backing you as well. I hope that the Muzio will become, you know, the number one company around the world when it comes to this field and this new category that you're creating. I think it's incredible.
Thank you. I'm working on it, Wayne. I'm working on it, keeping myself busy. So yeah, I really appreciate it. And always love to chat with you, Wayne. It's always great fun.
Same here. And don't forget to practice more on your music, and don't just focus 100% of your time on your work. Set some time for jamming together with me one of these days.
In our new band, Tweezers.
Tweezers, yes, we have to. It's a date, so let's do it. One of these things.
Look out for the upcoming live stream of Wayne and mine's band. We haven't had a single rehearsal yet, but it feels very promising.
You want to do it in person, or you want to do it virtually? Like I could be like playing my music here. You're following.
So, well, based on the current legislation in Singapore, we can technically meet up to rehearse if we're in a small enough group. But to play to an audience, it's going to have to be a live stream.
Yeah, so that's a lot of things to think over. So let's start plotting our, reunion, or should I say the start of this incredible new covers band called Tweezers, which just made its first mention and debut at PopFest Asia.
Yeah,
so
love it.
Whenever we have an in-person event, Tweezers must perform live, okay?
I agree.
Okay, it's a date. So thank you so much for coming on and gracing our event. We appreciate you so much, and we really love what you're doing. So hope to have you back again for our second edition, probably early February or late January. So I look forward to see you very, very soon.
Thanks for having me, Wayne.
Bye-bye, Hazel. Goodbye.